Imagine a world with no cities, no electricity, no safe place to sleep. A frozen, unforgiving wilderness where every breath could be your last. In that brutal age, humans weren't cushioned by technology or convenience. They fought tooth and nail just to survive. But some didn't just survive. They thrived. Amidst predators and peril, one group rose to dominance. They were stronger than the rest. Taller, sharper, more adaptable. They were the Cro-Magnons, the earliest modern humans of Europe. And while they built the future, another species faded into history. The Neanderthals. This is their untold story, the rise of giants and the fall of rivals. They weren't myths or bedtime legends. The Cro-Magnons were real flesh, blood, and bone. Our direct ancestors who walked the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe nearly 57,000 years ago. They didn't just coexist with other human species like the Neanderthals, they outlasted them. How? With a rare combination of intellect, resilience, and brute strength. They adapted to bitter cold, scarce resources, and dangerous predators. And if one stood before you today dressed like anyone else, you might just think they were your neighbor, because in many ways they still are. The Cro-Magnon lives on, in us. The Cro-Magnons weren't hunched or brutish. They stood tallfully upright with bodies that could rival modern athletes. Their features were strikingly familiar. Rounded skulls, flat faces, well-defined chins, and slender brow ridges. Not crude or primitive, but sharp, symmetrical, and modern. Their bones? A near-perfect mirror of ours. Broad shoulders, strong limbs, and posture as confident as any person today. To see one walk by, you might not do a double take. But in their time, they were giants, physically and symbolically. Towering not just in stature, but in evolutionary significance. They were the prototype of us. These weren't average people by any measure. The typical Cro-Magnon woman stood about 5'4" tall for the Ice Age. The men? Over 5'9", with some reaching 6'3" or more taller than many NFL athletes today. But height was only part of the story. They were built like living tanks. Their clavicles were 25% longer than ours, giving them broader shoulders and explosive upper body power. Their bones were thicker, denser, engineered by evolution for survival. And when scientists ran the numbers, they found something staggering. Cro-Magnons likely had 20% more body mass than us, mostly muscle. They weren't just big. They were built to endure. For the Cro-Magnons, strength wasn't about pride, it was about staying alive. In the ruthless cold of the Ice Age, survival meant battling sub-zero temperatures, fending off predators, and hunting beasts the size of trucks. Every muscle had a purpose. Every scar told a story. Their skeletons bear the evidence: fused neck vertebrae from repeated strain, fractures healed over time, bones bent by a lifetime of struggle. One woman's skull even shows a massive injury, a brutal blow to the head. But the bone had begun to regenerate. She survived it, because resilience wasn't optional. It was how they endured a world trying to break them every single day. The first Cro-Magnon ever discovered, known simply as Cro-Magnon 1, was no warrior, no perfect specimen of strength. He was riddled with tumors caused by a rare genetic disorder. Pain likely followed him for years, if not decades. And yet, he lived. Not just for a few seasons, but into what was considered old age, perhaps over 40 years. In a world where frostbite, predators, and starvation claimed lives young, his survival was nothing short of remarkable. His bones tell the story of endurance, of a man who faced constant pain but kept walking, kept breathing, kept living. Cro-Magnon 1 wasn't just a fossil. He was a testament to human resilience. These weren't your average hunters chasing rabbits through the brush. Cro-Magnons went after giants. wild horses charging across icy plains, reindeer herds with antlers like spears, massive bison, agile ibex on cliffs, and yet 7, the legendary woolly mammoths, towering and dangerous. Frozen carcasses recovered from ancient tundras still bear the marks deep punctures from stone-tipped weapons, expertly placed. These weren't lucky strikes. They were deliberate, precise. Cro-Magnons hunted in coordinated groups, using strategy and skill. And when necessary, they didn't shy away from apex predators, either leopards, cave lions, even bears. They were monster hunters in every sense of the word. Don't mistake ancient for primitive because the Cro-Magnon arsenal was anything but. They crafted an entire suite of specialized weapons, each one tailored for precision and power. Spears for close encounters, clubs to crush bone, atlatl spear throwers that extended reach and velocity, javelins to pierce from a distance, sharp blades carved from stone and bone, nets to entangle prey, even boomerangs, yes, boomerangs to distract or wound. And according to some theories, they may have even pioneered early versions of the bow. Every tool served a deadly purpose. Nothing was random. These weren't just hunters. They were engineers of survival. The weapons Cro-Magnons wielded weren't reserved for beasts alone. Sometimes, the deadliest enemy wasn't a predator but another human. Archaeologists have uncovered the signs: skulls fractured from blunt impacts, vertebrae cleanly sliced by sharp tools. One individual suffered a brutal strike to the face likely delivered by another Cro-Magnon. He didn't die instantly. The wound lingered, unhealed. His final days were spent in pain. Other remains reveal trauma consistent with brain hemorrhage, evidence of violent targeted attacks. And then comes the darkest chapter of all, where violence crossed the line into something far more disturbing. Deep within a cave in ancient England, archaeologists uncovered a chilling scene frozen in time. Human skulls 15,000 years old had been carefully carved into bowls. Other bones were split, scraped clean, even chewed marrow sucked dry like it was meat from a feast. This wasn't symbolic. This was survival, or something darker. Among the remains were children. Their tiny bones showed the same marking scut, broken, consumed. We often imagine early humans as noble survivors. But in this cave, that illusion shatters. Because these were modern humans just like us. And yet in the cold silence of the Ice Age, they were not always humane. Did Cro-Magnons kill the Neanderthals? It's a question that haunts the frozen pages of prehistory. One Neanderthal skeleton was found with a stone point wound driven into its ribs. A weapon type Neanderthals didn't use, but Cro-Magnons did. It wasn't just the injury, it was the angle, the force, the intent. Then there's the jawbone Neanderthal cut and carved in ways eerily similar to how Cro-Magnons processed deer. Was it an act of cannibalism? A ritual sacrifice? A war trophy to mark dominance? The bones don't speak clearly. They whisper, enough to raise suspicion, but never loud enough to give us the truth. Despite the conflict, not all encounters ended in bloodshed. Sometimes, they ended in something far more complex: interbreeding. Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals didn't just fight. They also merged. One astonishing example is OACE-1, a 40,000-year-old Cro-Magnon discovered in Romania. His DNA revealed a shocking truth: 9% Neanderthal ancestry. That means a grandparent, or even a parent, may have been full Neanderthal. And it wasn't just in the genes. Some ancient skulls show subtle traits, elongated shapes, robust brow secos of their Neanderthal kin. In the end, the line between them wasn't as clear as we once thought. They were enemies. They were allies. They were family. The Ice Age didn't just shape the land, it reshaped the people who lived through it. As conditions grew harsher, the Cro-Magnon body began to change. Some of their once robust traits softened, narrower bones, lighter frames. But their strength never vanished, it evolved. Their jaws remained powerful, designed to crush tough roots, crack nuts, and tear through raw meat. Their teeth? Broad, durable, tools in their own right. And their brains astonishingly grew even larger than ours. Not just in size, but in complexity. These weren't mindless survivors. They were thinkers, innovators, and adapters shaped by the ice, but never broken by it. The Cro-Magnons weren't just physically powerful, they were mentally formidable. Their brain capacity averaged 1,514 cubic centimeters, significantly larger than today's human average of 1,350. But it wasn't just size, it was function. Their occipital and frontal lobes, responsible for vision, planning, and decision-making, were particularly well developed. They didn't just react, they reasoned. They imagined. They strategized. Over 40,000 years, they gave rise to 5 distinct cultural traditions, each marked by evolving tools, art, and social complexity. These weren't cave dwellers in the dark. They were the first sparks of civilization. The Cro-Magnons weren't just brute force hunters, they were tacticians. They studied nature like a battlefield. They observed animal behavior, tracked migration routes, and used the land to their advantage. Entire herds were driven toward cliffs or trapped along riverbanks, efficient, calculated, collective. They set up seasonal camps based on food availability, moving with the rhythms of the earth, and their knowledge didn't stop with meat. They identified and harvested over 150 types of seeds, fruits, nuts, and starchy roots. They weren't just surviving. They were mastering the season-turning instinct into strategy and survival into science. Before humans farmed the land or built cities, they formed a bond with something wild, the wolf. Cro-Magnons may have been the first to domesticate dogs. In Belgium, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a 36,000-year-old puppy, its features showing the earliest signs of domestication. But the deeper story lies in a burial site, a man, a woman, and a dog laid to rest together. Not for ritual, but for love, for companionship, for loyalty that endured even in death. These animals weren't just tools, they were family. Guardians by night, hunting partners by day. The bond between human and dog may have begun here, in the ice and fire of prehistory. When shelter meant the difference between life and death, the Cro-Magnons became architects of survival. They didn't just hide in caves, they built. Using the bones and skulls of mammoths, they constructed sturdy frames. Then they covered them with animal skins, grass, and packed earth for insulation. These were no crude huts, they had structure. Defined zones for sleeping, cooking, working. Fires burned in the center, their smoke rising through primitive vents. The design was intentional, the layout efficient. In a frozen, unforgiving world, every inch had a purpose. These weren't just shelters. They were homes carved from extinction. The Cro-Magnons were not isolated wanderers scattered across a frozen wilderness. They were part of a vast, interconnected web. Evidence shows they traded across distances of more than 200 kilometers, sex-changing flint for blades, ochre for body paint, shells for ornaments, and ideas for survival. This wasn't just barter, it was culture in motion. They built relationships between tribes, passed down knowledge, and shared innovations across generations. They spoke, they signaled, they gathered. Long before written language, they were already communicating across landscapes. They weren't just surviving together. They were building the first threads of civilization. Beneath the muscle and the survival instinct, the Cro-Magnons had something deeper soul. They painted their bodies with red ochre, turning skin into canvas. Scars became symbols. Tattoos told stories. Piercings marked identity or tribe. And when they found a cave wall, They didn't just shelter under it, they transformed it. They painted wild horses, mammoths, lions' visions of their world, rendered with precision and awe. Some of the greatest art in human history was born in darkness, lit only by fire. And then came sound. Flutes from bird bones, drums made from skin and wood, buzzers that whirled through the air. Their art spoke not just to the eyes, but to the spirit. So what happened to the Cro-Magnons? Did they disappear? Were they lost to time like so many others? They didn't vanish. They became us. As the Ice Age tightened its grip and other human species faded into extinction, the Cro-Magnons adapted. They changed, evolved, and endured. Their bones became our bones. Their fire still burns in our blood. And maybe, just maybe, every time we pick up a brush, build something with our hands, write a story, or hum a tune, that creative spark isn't just human. It's Cro-Magnon alive again, echoing through time. If this story shook you, if you never realized just how closely you're connected to these ancient giants, then don't stop here. Like the video to support the journey. Subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows for more untold truths from our distant past. Drop a comment below. What do you think truly happened to the Neanderthals? Were they conquered, absorbed, or simply forgotten? Join us as we dig deeper, question the myths, and illuminate the shadows of prehistory. Because the past isn't dead. It's buried waiting to be uncovered.